Hey, welcome to the Chasing the Wind podcast. I'm Mark Hansen, and just checking in with you this week for a few minutes to just talk about what the Holy Spirit is doing. And so this morning I want to talk to you just for a moment about an experience I had while I was on a sabbatical this past fall. A gentleman in my church likes to do woodworking, and he likes to turn bowls and plates, and he makes communion sets, makes little bitty ones that he gives to people, ordinands, people who get ordained, so they can go around and take communion to people in their churches who cannot make it to church. We usually do communion by intinction, taking the wafer, dipping it into a cup of juice or whatever. Wine, and so they're nice little sets. But anyway, Dave has been after me as pastor to go over and turn a bowl with him. And so it was one of the first things I did when I was on my sabbatical. And so he got this block of cherry wood out, and it wasn't very big. I didn't want to do anything huge. And I was a little nervous because I'm like, I don't want to ruin any of his stuff, which he assured me I can't ruin it. Because he hasn't ruined it. So I guess if he didn't ruin it, I couldn't. So in chasing the wind and reflecting upon that day, it was actually a 2-day session because I couldn't finish it in one day. But I like to see how God works in just the ordinary things, and the Holy Spirit does that a lot. We see that way Jesus used parables. He just took what was right in front of him and he used it as an example that people would understand. So some of you might understand this, maybe some of you won't. But, you just don't find bowls that are just pressed into place. I suppose you can. But this is my wonderful creation that I made. I'm a big person on icons. Icons are not idols, by the way, but they are they're items or pictures or images that represent something to us. And specifically, they represent God to us, and they draw us in so that we can draw closer to God. So I have this bowl on my desk as a reminder of my time with Dave. It also holds candy, which I like very much, by the way. It also reminds me of God's transforming work in my life. As I thought about this nice, smooth bowl, with the exception of this little, some people would call that a blemish, I wanted to leave it there because I think it's pretty. Sometimes we find things that are that's not very nice. I like little things like that. I have a coffee table at home that years ago when I first started ministry, a gentleman up in Wisconsin made this coffee table for us. And this coffee table, you could park a car on it. It's not big, but it's strong. This thing is really, really strong. It was made from wood from his land, and he made this thing for us. But now there are some little blemishes, if you will, on it from our 20-month-old German Shorthair Pointer puppy. Well, she made him when she was younger, probably about a year ago or so, where she decided that was worth probably leaving her mark on. Now, sometimes we can look at that and say, man, I should get rid of that. I should sand those out, make it look nice again. Not going to do that. It's a reminder to me of when she was a puppy, and there's going to be a day I'm going to wish I did remember when she was a puppy. So I'm going to leave that little quote-unquote blemish, because it's really not a blemish. I think it makes it look really nice. Here's the interesting thing. As I sat there and began this process, this rough piece of wood, Dave put a little, I don't know what he called it, so I didn't pay attention to that. There wasn't a quiz afterwards, so it didn't matter to me. But he puts this little ridge in it so that he can put it onto the lathe, and he gets this thing going, and he knew exactly what to do. All I had to do was pretty much stand there with this really cool mask on to keep things from hitting me in the face. And this rough piece of wood, and he goes, well, we got to get rid of the bark and the outside. And he goes, take it down as far as you want. And if you want to get rid of all the bark, get rid of all the bark. But again, I chose to leave my beauty mark on there because I think that's what makes it unique. So I started making this, and pretty soon he's like, yep, we got that done. We got the rough edges off. And then we started working a little bit more intricately and smoothing it out. We had to use a different tool. I had to use a different way of doing it. And pretty soon, the bowl started taking shape. Funny thing is, at one point, I got a little overzealous. Part of the reason I don't do stuff like this is because I want it done in like 15 minutes. Things like this don't take 15 minutes. they take like 4, 5, 6, 7 hours depending on what you're doing. So it was a good lesson for me to just kind of learn a little bit of patience here. But I would get a little overzealous, and I'd start going, and wham, that piece of that piece of wood came flying off there, hit me in the stomach. Fortunately, I'm well guarded there, so nothing, I didn't get hurt or anything. And we had a good laugh about it. Dave set it back up, and away we went again. He goes, "Not so hard next time, Pastor. Just go a little bit easier." That's a good lesson. Sometimes we want to rush through getting things done. We want to rush through transformation. You see where things go here, how the Holy Spirit will teach us things if we just will make ourselves open and more present to the Holy Spirit. So pretty soon I get my bowl going, and I'm like, "Dave, how deep do I want to go?" Well, he pulled out this thing. I think it's called a caliper is what he called it, but it like measures. And so he measured, but then there was something really fascinating, and this is something I'm still pondering. At one point, Dave didn't use the caliper, and he just took his fingers and he went like this, was just measuring it by feel, by touch. Got me thinking that's how we're transformed. God does take the rough, takes off our rough edges, and he starts working. But then sometimes he might use a caliper, so to speak. I'm not sure what that is yet, how that correlates into this. But what really hit me was it's more the touch of the Master upon our lives, measuring, feeling. Yeah, I can use a caliper and it tells me how deep it is, but I can also take it and feel and like, yeah, this is a good spot. This is good. This will do the trick. It'll hold candy. Trust me, it holds plenty of candy. I think that's what God does. It made me think about in Jeremiah 18, not a piece of wood, but something similar, is we are like clay on the potter's wheel. God's a potter, and he's making us and molding us. I asked Dave, I said, "What happens if the wood splits? What do we do?" He goes, "Get another piece of wood." He's got a lot of wood. He's got a lot of wood there. With potters, they sometimes the clay doesn't look right, and they mush it down and they start over again. I said, "Dave, what do? I put a couple ridges in there." He goes, "Well, we'll get rid of them. We'll get rid of them." There's times I get ridges in my life because maybe I'm pushing too hard or I'm not paying attention enough, and that's all right. Well, we'll make it work. We'll make it work. So here's the takeaway with Chasing the Wind today. Let God do what he wants to do in your life. Make yourself available to him. I was listening to some friends talk recently about how we just sometimes think that it's all got to be perfect, but God's working on us. God's working on us. He doesn't waste a good crisis. That's what I like to tell people. He doesn't waste a good crisis. You look at my bowl, it's a pretty nice bowl. I like it. I always have this little side showing so I can see it. But if you put your hand in it, there's a little lump in the middle. I didn't quite get it perfect, but you know what? It still works, and I like it. And God's still working on us if we'll just let him do what he wants to do. I could go back and do some stuff to it if I want to, but I like it just the way it is. So keep chasing the wind. Keep making yourself available to God and what he wants to do in your life. And remember that he's not finished with us yet. Be blessed, and we'll see you next time on Chasing the Wind podcast.